Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So I want to talk to you about this tangle. That's part of the title for this retreat. And it comes from a short discourse in the Samyutta Nikaya, which is the connected discourses. It's number 7, or book 7, number 6. And it's posted on the bulletin board out there in the foyer. So you can take a look at it, maybe take a photo of it if you want to read it over and over. Oh, you don't have your phones. Don't worry. It's short. And it's short, in part, it's short anyway, but it's also a little shorter on the paper because it's not quite the whole sutta here. There's a little bit at the beginning that's not on the page, and it's about who comes to see the Buddha when this happens, and it's a matted hair ascetic. So these are some wanderers, like the Buddhist monastics, the Buddha's own monastic sangha, who would, live on alms food, like we still do today, and just pursuing the holy life, the spiritual life. But this group, instead of shaving their heads, they had a lot of hair, and it was matted. And then he talks about a tangle. And he says, a tangle within, a tangle without. People are entangled in a tangle. Gautama, I ask you this, who can untangle this tangle? And the Buddha replies, a person established in integrity, developing discernment and mindfulness, ardent and clear, they can untangle this tangle. Those whose passions, aversions, and ignorance have faded away, for them the tangle's untangled. So one of the things to recognize about the suttas, which means discourses, that we have passed down for this 2,600 years, it's amazing, and is that when we translate, it's always an interpretation. And there are a couple of words here that in the original language, the Pali language, are a little bit different. First of all, this idea of a person established in integrity, the word there is actually, a Pali word is sila. It's someone established in virtue, moral virtue. Integrity, I think, is a beautiful way to put it, but it's a little less specific and clear. So this untangling starts with morality, precepts. Our life is tangled when we are not moral. And the Buddha didn't make these judgments like moralistically. It wasn't like, oh, this is right and this is wrong. He was focused on what's the result. What's the result of killing, stealing, lying, sexual misconduct, substance abuse? So the starting with virtue, And then developing discernment and mindfulness. Discernment is pretty good. It's the word is panya, which means wisdom, so developing wisdom. And discernment is one way to describe that. The mindfulness part isn't exactly what the sutta says. It says the mind, developing the mind. And so I want to talk about that a little bit tonight. How does this help us untangle the tangle? The tangle, of course, is another way to think of the reason for our suffering. Why we're unhappy, why we're in pain, why we're struggling. And the framework that we're giving you for this retreat is the 4 foundations of mindfulness, coming from a different sutta that the Buddha gave and mentioned many times throughout the discourses. So you've got it in your little handout. I'm going to follow this tonight. And the way I'm going to follow it is that I'm going to talk about relationships, also part of this theme of this retreat. And tonight, focus on the relationship we have with ourselves. The most important relationship, really. How we perceive ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, how we react to things, what's our way of operating in the world. We're going to talk a little bit about why we are the way we are and the fact that this isn't really who we are. So we'll get there. And we'll start with this contemplation of the body. So the first of the 4 foundations or establishments of mindfulness. And the Pali word is kaya nupassana. Kaya means body. Nupassana is that word for the contemplation. And I want to encourage you to reflect on what is your relationship to your body at this point in your life. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you feel like it's serving you? You're kind of being able to do the things you want to do. Maybe you're not able to do the things you want to do. Maybe your body is undoubtedly changing. It changes. And do you feel okay with it? There's a fair bit on the psychological level about how we relate to the body. Have you reflected very much about the fact that this body's going to die? A lot of us, sort of a standard, kind of common truth about human beings is that intellectually we know the body's going to die at some point. But at a feeling level, it feels like it's way off in the future. We continually kind of put it outside our thinking, our expectations. But it's very helpful. The Buddha really encouraged us to reflect. One of the, a few of the different methods of mindfulness of the body are around the death and falling apart of the body. And the reason for that is because we think the body is who we are. And it's understandable, right? From the time we were born, we look in the mirror and that's what we see. And we're told this is who we are. And we're expected to control our body. Well, sometimes we can and sometimes we can't. There's a lot about it that's not in our control. If it was really under control, we wouldn't allow it to get sick or to break down. It's a little more like our car than it is like me, right? Car ages, things start to go wrong, it breaks down, something happens to it and it gets broken, just like maybe you get into an accident, not necessarily with your car, any accident, and you break bones or whatever, right? That's the nature of the body. The body is really a material composition of many fundamental things that have to come together to make it work. So this is kind of the view that the Buddha wanted us to see. So when we think about, how do I relate to my body? First of all, can we be kind to it? Do we punish ourselves by denying comfort or the needs of the body? This is something that happened even in the time of the Buddha. I think you might have heard about the Buddha doing these ascetic practices for a long time. It was something that was believed at that time to help you overcome your defilements, your negative patterns, that you would come to understand the nature of reality by really denying the body food or comfort in various ways, and he found that it just didn't work. There wasn't any good result from it. But sometimes human beings do this, right? We're in a relationship with the body that's kind of a little bit at war. So this is something that's useful to look at and to reflect on. Is this really me? Or if it's not me, who am I? Just kind of give that some thought. And can I bring more kindness to the body and bring more awareness to the body so that I can help it do what it needs to do, to just live and maybe be less painful, or give it enough sleep and give it good food. And of course, all of that will do it, and there's still challenges with the body. But what's the tangle? The tangle really comes because we identify with the body as us, and we want it to be different than it is. That's really the tangle. And the more we can appreciate that the body is something we borrow for a while, and then we have to give it back to nature. And we can then be less identified, say like with our face, or with our shape, or whatever, and recognize that there's something much more profound that really is you. And we're going to talk more about, what is that? So the tangle, when we, of course, we're going to have pain, physical pain in our life. There's nobody who can avoid that. Comes along with having a body. But when we really reflect on the pain, also, if we can be present with it. And of course, we're very blessed to live at this time where there are methods to support us with pain relief, and doing that in a way that's kind and sensible can really help us. But then we also need to learn how to be with pain, how to observe it also as not me, not mine. Can I be mindful of pain without the mental weight of worrying about it? worrying about whether or not this is going to continue or get worse? Can we notice the spaces where the pain isn't there anymore? So these are some things to just reflect on. As you're practicing this week, take some time to really notice how you relate to your body. See if there are ways you can be more content with it, or to give it more kindness and gentleness, letting go of that identification. And when we can do that, we can be a lot happier and less entangled. There's less suffering. The second foundation of mindfulness is about feeling. And I don't know what you're going through right now in your life, but I do know that whenever 100 people get together, there are some people who are going through grief. Some of you are feeling the loss of someone or something. There are some people going through health challenges. There are some people who might feel like they don't know what their purpose is in life. You know, there are some people in this room probably working with fear or worry or anxiety. This is just normal. Any group of people comes together, there are going to be people experiencing these kinds of things. You may be going through a period where things are pretty good and you're feeling pretty happy and there's no real significant suffering. And even when that's the case, we do have a kind of tangle, a tangle within, which is what we're focusing on, that very first line in the sutta, a tangle within with our feelings. Because we're very driven by feeling. You know, if a feeling of wanting something comes up, we're very driven by it. If a feeling of sadness or loneliness or, you know, we really want to overcome it. We want to get rid of it. When we want to grab hold of something, you know, that desire to get something or the desire to get rid of something, it's the same tangle. The things we don't like about ourselves or the feelings that we don't want to have, we want to get rid of them. But that's actually not the way to untangle from them. That the way to untangle from them is to turn and face them. To be present with whatever we're feeling. But it's not the usual way that we're present with feeling, where we're identifying with it. We're coming back to the same theme as with the body. To not think that this I'm sad or I'm angry, but, you know, being present with the fact that there's anger here. I went through a real bout of irritation about a week or so ago. Like a couple of days where there was just irritation arising about all different kinds of things. And you know what usually happens is we are looking outside of ourselves for the cause. It's because this person is acting like that, and then I feel irritated by that. That's kind of our natural way of thinking about things. That's what we're taught to do. But if you look at what the Buddha taught, he's saying you're not going to get rid of this irritation issue. And then even the thought of I want to get rid of it has a grasping around it. But you're not going to work through it and come to some peace and relief around it by looking at who said what or did what or what they're doing, and I want them to do it differently, and maybe getting into an argument with them about it. the way to be relieved of the irritation is to really be present with feeling it inside. So I had to be with my own feeling. It showed up here like in my chest or in my stomach. That's usually where in the body we can sense the feelings, the emotional experience we're having. And when we're able to look at it and be with it, first of all, it's not as bad as we thought, because it's just a feeling. If we have that concept that feeling is just a feeling, it's going to pass. It's impermanent. It comes and goes like weather. I don't get, upset when it's sunny. I mean, today we were hot. Tomorrow I think we might be cold. And we know that it's going to pass, right? We're going to, like, if we're just, okay, I can be with this. It's not really unbearable right now. Or maybe I just have to get in the shade or whatever. But there's this same thing is true, no matter what kind of feelings are arising. So I had this irritation. It was really quite strong. Lots of strong feelings running through my system. And it can be really hard when you're around people who know you really well, because they can tell what's going on with you and then they want to know what's wrong. I was, I think, pretty able to skirt around that so that I could just take care of this thing, this irritation. At a couple points I had to explain to people, yeah, I'm just feeling this irritation. Like, where does this even come from? Yes, I don't want it. But if I don't fall into, I don't want it, and instead I can just be with it. Be with it with some kindness and compassion, being aware that it's going to pass, and knowing that I don't have to own this. I don't have to take, you might say, the responsibility for it being there. The responsibility I have is how I manage it, how I work with it. And of course, being present with it and taking care of it in that way helped it to pass through. And then whatever people were doing, it just didn't matter. And one of the keys here is this idea of, instead of looking for the problem outside of us, we look at what's really happening inside. When we go out, when the mind goes out, it's never really going to find the way to untangle the tangle. In case you haven't noticed, when you try to untangle things externally, it never really gets completely resolved. I mean, of course we can be more skillful in relationships. We're going to talk about that tomorrow night. And that can help. But working with those feeling reactions, that's an inside job. And so with this mindfulness of feeling means there's this part of your mind that watches, that witnesses, that sees it happening. It sees it coming up. It can be present with it without being engrossed in it, without being overwhelmed by it, without being awash in it. It's like standing at the edge of it, and just being there, like a friend. And then you can see it fizzle out, disappear. And then what happens is that our whole relationship with whatever those things were that were causing us, or the triggers for those feelings to come up, you see them in a completely different light. And maybe at that time there is something to be said to someone else about, if we do it that way, then there's going to be this kind of problem or whatever, bring something to their attention. But a lot of the time, you don't even have to talk about it, because the heat of it that comes up because of our old conditioning is gone. Is this making sense? Some of you have probably established practices and methods for doing this, and you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if this is new to you, if your tools have mainly been around trying to fix what's outside of yourself, then this could be a real valuable gold mine kind of discovery. And this is really what the Buddha was teaching in the Noble Truths when he first said, okay, the noble truth of suffering. Suffering is something we need to understand. It's like, be present with this suffering and understand it. Recognize that there's a cause, and it's not a cause outside of you. It's a cause of the way that our mind's wired, the way we see things, and that we can let go of that. It's fascinating, and it's effective, and it changes your life. Last week I could have had 3 or 4 arguments over this. There was none of that. All I had to do was be with it. Untangle that tangle of feeling. And it's understandable that feeling's so powerful, right? Because that's what encourages us to get our fundamental needs met. It encourages us to stay alive. If you're hungry, you seek out the food you need, whatever. But then in the emotional realm, also that can be life-saving. If you feel fear, then maybe it's a good time to get away from whatever is happening. We should have a little fear for that rattlesnake, I think, for example. But, there's so much in our feeling experience that binds us to suffering that we don't need. It's not helping. And so this is where mindfulness and clear awareness and wisdom can really help us untangle that tangle. And the next one is the contemplation of mind. So here I want to talk about the way we think, and how the way we think often makes us miserable, and that we can change it. So what the Buddha pointed out is that all of these levels of, our body, our feelings, our emotions, our mind, these are all things that are what we experience there. It's all based on different kinds of causes and conditions. They're not permanent entities. It's constantly changing or changeable. So in a way, that's the bad news and it's the good news. Because, of course, we want the things that we don't like to change, and we want the things that we like to stay the same. That's one way in which we get caught. But it's also the case that because the mind can change, we have an opportunity to change it in the way we want to change it. There are these lovely studies now about meditators and how the mind of a meditator is actually rewired. The brain changes. And our minds react in different ways than they used to react because of the training we give them. So this is a wonderful thing to know. We don't have to follow the same patterns that we've been taught from the time we were small. I mean, it's understandable that we pick them up. We think, oh, I'm an angry person, or a happy person, or a grumpy person, or an irritable person, or a kind of a lost in the clouds person, or whatever. Whatever you think. What's your relationship to yourself, to your mind, to your emotions? If you consider it, how much do you believe that this is you and that you can't change it? I'd like to really, just for your reflection, for your experimentation, drop in the idea that this can be changed. And you can explore that. What's the thing in your life that's really causing you the most trouble right now? Is it something related to you, yourself, or a relationship, some circumstance in the world? We're going to talk about all those layers, but right now I want to suggest that how we relate to ourselves is a huge piece of whether or not this external thing is going to really be a problem for us or not. And so this is the part we have, influence over. And so what are the kinds of thoughts that are really helpful? And what are the kinds of thoughts that are harmful? If we start to imagine a future that's dark and difficult, if we start to think, repeatedly think about things that we worry about, most of the time the things we worry about never happen. It's good to think about what could happen, just enough to prepare, to kind of put some things in order that can be helpful. But when we catch ourselves ruminating over, those things that we might fear, or things that bring up fear, or things that accentuate worry, we might want to give that pause and really just wait a minute. I don't have to believe this. I don't have to buy into this. I can be present with it and come to understand what's really fueling it. And really, really take a look. Really take some time. And think about how you can change that mental pattern. It's really possible. The Buddha gave us a lot of different tools. And of course, we also have some wonderful tools from modern psychology. And I have to say, once I became, becoming a Buddhist isn't the key, but once I started to look into what the Buddha taught, everything that had worked for me in therapy was already in the Buddhist teachings. It was really, really amazing. Sometimes it's a little hard to unlock them from the ancient language. But once we start to understand it, it's like it opens a world of possibility and opportunity for seeing more clearly how things are and how they work. And then we can, with some consistent attention, make some real changes in our habits and in our patterns. They're not etched in rock. They're written in the sand. You can change these things. Even if you've been doing some pattern all your life. And we all have those patterns that keep us entangled. At the root of it, this entanglement with our body, with our feelings, with our mind, our ways of thinking, is about attachment. It's about that perception that this is who I am, or this is my history and I am subject, the result of this history, and that's how it is. But what we can start to appreciate or experiment with and inquire around is how we can take what has happened in the past and start to really see how we can turn our way of being in a different direction. And that brings us to the fourth foundation of mindfulness, the Dhamma. Now the word Dhamma has a number of different meanings, but the one here is really the Dhamma representing the truth of the way things are. That idea that everything in this world including our thoughts, including our feelings, including our bodies, including anything else that we think is me or mine, are really constantly changing and falling apart. Now that might sound like the bad news, but there's something much deeper in the Dhamma. That part that doesn't change. That part that doesn't stand in opposition to someone else who seems to be different from me. This is a much richer and deeper concept. And the way to start to unlock it is to observe the changing nature of everything. And also the fact that because things are changing, whether it's something that can get broken or lost, or something that just deteriorates, or whether it's something that morphs from the way it is now, like a relationship, to something different, that when we see that this is all changing, instead of grieving over it, and I'll say more about grief in a second, but instead of being angry or sad, that we recognize this is its nature. This is its true nature. And I don't need to be so attached to it. And when I am attached to it, there's dukkha, suffering, discomfort. When I let go, there's a sense of peace and freedom. And then to start to recognize that any of these things that change, they are not who you are. You can think, well, if I were to ask you, who are you? How many of you have ever done an exercise like that, where someone asks you, who are you? Yeah, a couple people. And then you say, well, I'm a nun. And then they say, who are you? Am I supposed to go deeper? Because am I really a nun? This is just a form. This isn't really a self. If I attach to being a nun and I think, oh, I need to be like this or like that because I'm a nun, that's going to be suffering. That's suffering. And then, maybe I say, well, I'm a mother. I have 2 children. That happened, obviously, long before I became a nun. And, identifying as a mother in a worldly sense is a helpful thing, the way I can maybe support them, the way I have supported them in the past. Of course, there's the other side for any of you who are parents or who have had parents. That probably covers most of you. It's like, it's a two-edged sword, all the mistakes we've made or whatever, and all that. That's why the identification with it, it's really a tangle. But if I can just use my role as a mother to be supportive and then let go, can't control them. You probably knew that. I don't have to suffer with it. And yet those feelings like, grief can arise, and then it's completely, there's nothing ever to feel bad about with whatever emotion arises in us. There are reasons for it. We can come to it with kindness and compassion, being a friend to it, being present with it, recognizing why we feel that way. One of the ways we get caught up as practitioners is that we think, oh, if I'm a Buddhist practitioner, I should feel like this or not feel like that. Or I should think like this and not think like that. Or I should be getting further along in my practice than I am. Or all those things make us miserable. And we don't have to go there. We could come back to the present moment, be with the way things are, and start to observe what the part of the mind is like that's watching. Does it change? Or whenever you come to it, is it always there, just watching, not caught up in it, whatever it is? This is worth reflecting on, really noticing as you practice. Maybe as you're meditating tonight or tomorrow and becoming more calm, hopefully in a way that brings peace and, whatever it brings. A busy mind, restlessness, whatever it brings. You can come back to that watching, that observing. And that part's not going to be restless. That part's not going to be overcome by thinking. It just sees it. This is really what the Buddha wanted us to notice. You can continue to ask yourself, like, who am I? Am I this person from this culture? All my relatives going as far back as I can, that I know of, are all from the Netherlands. What does that say about who I am? Kind of nothing, really. It's like, okay, I've been conditioned in certain ways, have certain perceptions, and I have certain privileges. It's important to know that and to try to live in a way that's kind and fair and caring about all of our different situations. Humble. These qualities that we want to cultivate. Notice how there's a different sense there. I think there's a different sense in these qualities that we know are helpful, like the ones we saw in the thing we chanted today. Be easy to look after and patient, kind, and humble. Those kinds of qualities. It's not like if I identify with being a humble person, what is that? It's not humility. Even to identify with being a kind person, or identify with the opposite. I'm a mean person. Someone came to me and talked about how he's a liar. Long, long time ago. And I thought, that's not you. Even though he probably lied often, probably started as he was a kid because, kids lie so they don't get into trouble. There were causes, there were reasons. That doesn't mean you're a liar. That doesn't mean you don't have to identify with that. You can change it. And I said to him, okay, see if you can go through today without lying. Whenever you're tempted to lie, you resist it. See how it goes. If he keeps that up, he can change that pattern. Even if something bad has happened in the past that we did, it's in the past. We can let it go. Maybe we can't just say, I want to let it go. It's not that easy, is it? But through really investigating and bringing more kindness and compassion, eventually we can understand the reasons that bring us to the actions we take. Those can be examined and understood with compassion. We can make a determination to not go down that road again because we know what it leads to. It's a lot of dukkha, a lot of suffering. It's beautiful to think of picking up precepts, moral precepts, and seeing that we can choose to do them, and we can see how much more simple our life becomes. If that person who had been lying then picks up being truthful and doesn't lie anymore, what do you think they're going to discover? They don't have to worry about who they told what to, they can relax. And they're trusted. How to be trustworthy in this world. But then if I identify with being a trustworthy person, again, I'm back in the dukkha tangle. So I think you can get the idea. if you ask yourself over and over again, who am I? What are all the layers that come forward? And can you let them go? And see that, okay, this is part of the veneer. This is part of the old conditioning. This is part of what society has told me I am. Or teachers have told me I am. Or parents have told me I am. Or people at work or whatever. But that doesn't mean that's who you are. Who are you really? This is the investigation and the freedom. And learning how to be kind to ourselves, learning how to be able to face everything, anything. Let go of the pretense, the masks that we walk around wearing. We won't need them anymore. Don't have to pretend to be anything. Don't have to be anything. We can love more completely, more freely, love everyone. We can love ourselves. Really love ourselves. We can be kind and patient. And whatever comes up, we can face it. Can be present with it. And really start to strengthen that part that watches, that witnesses. The whole parade of feelings and thoughts, identities, and see what they really are. Clouds coming through, weather. And the tangle untangles. So I'm going to leave you with that for your reflection for tonight. And I look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And we'll get some idea of what's happening for you. Some of you, and on through the week, all of you. Which I look forward to. Because there's real relief waiting. And you can do this.